Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Unmelanated Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dara. Let's jump in. So, I think it's time for us to talk about the 2024 election. And before you say, oh no, I don't want to hear about it no more, I'm sick of talking about this, I'm also sick of talking about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm a Black woman living in America and I don't plan to leave anytime soon. So that means I'm going to have to make the most of what we got and come to terms with what we have to do. To do that, we need to establish a couple of things. First of all, I said before, this season is all about who gets what, when, and how. So in this episode, I wanted to talk about and respond to this urgent idea of minding our Black business, our Black political business. So for a second, let's talk numbers. I want to try to paint a picture. We'll start with the 2024 voter turnout. Nationally, about 63.7% of voters turned out. That means that of the registered voters, 63.7% of them turned out and cast a ballot in the 2024 presidential election. Now that number is lower than the number who turned out for the 2020 election, which the record turnout was about 66.6%. But it's still higher than every other election since 2004. Now in Arkansas, we had a bit of a lower turnout. We had about 53.5% turnout, meaning that only 53.5% of the registered voters in the state of Arkansas actually turned out to vote for president in 2024. Arkansas was actually one of the states with the lowest voter turnout in this last presidential election. Now, if we're thinking about the candidates, we had two tickets, right? We had the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket, and we had the Donald Trump and J.D. Vance ticket. The Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket earned about 48.3% of the vote nationally. The Donald Trump and J.D. Vance ticket earned about 49.8% nationally. It's a much closer race than people would like for you to think sometimes. But if we're thinking about Arkansas, it's not so much the case. In Arkansas, the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket earned only about 33%, and the Donald Trump and J.D. Vance picked up the other 64% in the state of Arkansas. And if we move on down to our gubernatorial election in 2022, remember that gubernatorial refers to anything about a governor, right? So gubernatorial, governor, they kind of sound alike. So that's how you can remember. If you ever hear the term gubernatorial, they're only talking about the governor of a state. So in Arkansas's 2022 gubernatorial election, Chris Jones earned 35% of the vote, and Sarah Sanders earned 63% of the vote. It's a very similar ratio to the way that the presidential breakdown happened. However, we'll talk a little bit later about a little difference in some of those numbers. If we're talking about Black voters specifically, though, if we're national Black voters, according to those exit polls, 13% of all voters were Black. So 13% of all the ballots cast for president were for Black people. 16% of Black voters supported Trump in 2024, and that's an increase of about 8% since 2020 for Black folks supporting a Republican candidate. However, about 83% of Black voters supported the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket, which really outshines that small number of 16%. That doesn't mean we ignore that 16%, but please don't be discouraged thinking that, everybody's becoming a Republican. There was still an overwhelming majority of Black people who voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Now, national turnout dipped a bit from 2020 to 2024. However, census data shows us that still Black voters turned out way more than other groups of voters like Asian Americans or Latino Americans. So again, don't listen to the hype that's saying that Black people are not engaged, Black people don't turn out to vote, because they do. Arkansas had the lowest youth voter turnout in 2024, with about 33% of registered voters under 30 actually turning out to vote. And while that's not a race-specific statistic, it is an indicator of a pretty big problem that we have on our hands. If young people aren't participating now, what makes us think that they're going to participate in the future? So that's definitely something we have to tackle. Now, you might be asking, well, why do these things matter right now? Well, I'm here to tell you that midterms are coming up. And if you don't know what midterm elections are the elections that occur in the middle of a presidential term. So between those 4-year terms, you have 2 years, and then you have a midterm election, another 2 years, a presidential election. And the cycle goes on and on like that. Well, we know that turnout is consistently lower during midterm elections. And that's a bit consequential for us, because that means that there are less people participating in that election. There are less people participating in that election if it's in the midterms, almost every single time. Arkansas holds its gubernatorial, that means governor, gubernatorial election during the midterms. So if we put that together, that says that there are less people determining who the governor of Arkansas is than there are who are voting for president in the state of Arkansas. So let's break that down. I'll give you an example. In 2020, about 1 million people voted in the presidential election. In 2022, only about 900,000 individuals cast a ballot for governor. That's over 300,000 less voters who cast a ballot for who is controlling the state. The president is quite important. I wouldn't say that they're not important, but I can guarantee you the governor is making more decisions that affect your daily life, full stop. Just as an example, of those 900,000 individuals who voted for governor of Arkansas, about 63% of them voted for Sarah Sanders. So, in a state with a population of about 3 million individuals and a voting age population of about 2.3 million, only 570,000 people decided who needs to be in charge. I'll say that again. About 571,000 people in a state with 3 million people in it decided who needs to be in charge. That just doesn't sound right. All I'm trying to say is, for too long, a small group of people have been making choices for the larger group, especially in a state as unmelanated as Arkansas. That does not sound like good news for people like us. Now, the thing is, elections aren't so complicated. You only need 50% plus 1. So you need 50% of the total votes plus 1 single vote to take you over the top. If we're looking at the numbers, though, that doesn't really seem so hot for us, right? Looking at these numbers, it's fair to feel hopeless. Quite frankly, it makes total sense to have this idea of being tired and wanting to sit it out. And I'm not here to tell you that that's wrong. I'm here to validate you. I'm here to say that you do deserve to rest. Black people deserve to rest. It feels like we're always being called on to save the world. In addition, we deserve better choices. We deserve individuals who are running for office because they care, not because they want to put another line on their CV, not because they're trying to make some more money. We deserve better. Now, we deserve all these things, and we're obviously not getting them, but that does not mean that we can stop. Politically, we cannot stop. Yes, you need to take care of yourself, but we cannot afford to sit this out. Like I said when I started, I'm not going anywhere. So that means I have to play the hand I was dealt. And I'm not the person you want as a spades partner, but I'm for damn sure the person that you want walking with you as we get to the midterms and past the midterms, because I'm here to talk about what is going on and how you can understand and be a part of the solution. Here's the thing. If you're not at the table, best case scenario, you'll be hungry. Worst case scenario, you're on the menu. And what do I mean by that? Well, as Black people, as young people, as individuals who are dedicated to liberation generally, we know that if we sit out this fight, there are individuals who we have documented evidence of having a serious disdain for us, right? They're the ones that are going to be in charge. What makes us believe that they're going to make the decisions that are best for us? Who says that they're going to make decisions for our betterment? If we already know they don't like us and we sit out, what's left for them to do aside from make those choices? Even if we're thinking about in our own communities and in our own organizations, we want to complain about people being so old and out of touch and they don't know what's going on. But at the same time, it's difficult to get people to step up into leadership positions. Nobody wants to take on the responsibility. We have to go ahead and learn how to do these things and try to lead if we want to make a change. Here's the thing, y'all. We have to believe that we can make that change. We have to believe that we can take the steps that are necessary, and by taking those steps, we will affect change. What I'm talking about is this idea of political efficacy. Political efficacy refers to the belief that one's actions can influence political processes and that individuals have the capability to make a difference in governance. In other words, your work matters. It means something. Your work matters and it means something. When people feel a high level of political efficacy, they're more likely to participate in elections and they're more likely to believe that their vote matters. Vice versa, if a person experiences low efficacy, they're less likely to participate because they don't think that their vote or their voice matters. Low political efficacy sounds a lot like my vote doesn't matter, they're gonna do what they want to anyway, I'm just one person, it doesn't matter what I think. And if you haven't said those things, I know for a fact you've heard somebody say those things. I have so many people in my life who feel that way, and it's a valid feeling. It shouldn't be a surprise that marginalized groups like Black Americans and other folks often experience low political efficacy. Simply looking at the numbers, it makes sense to feel like you don't have a fighting chance. Black Americans make up about 13 to 14% of the U.S. population and around 15 to 16% in the state of Arkansas. It doesn't look like that's gonna change anytime soon, but that's not the final story. That's not where you stop. The fact of the matter is that we have power to change things in a lot of different ways if we can just get ourselves together. Even with a small percentage of the population, we can affect real change on the county level, on a city level, even on a state level. Especially for my country folks, if you live in an unincorporated community, it's not really a town, it's not a municipality, you just know where it is, and so you know how to get there. Like me, that's where I'm from. You need to know how to deal with the county because you don't have a municipality or a city to go to and talk to a mayor. You have to deal with the county judge. So there are levels upon levels of opportunities for us to get involved and to do something and advocate for ourselves. Political efficacy, or this belief that you can influence governing powers, is crucial if we want to protect ourselves in this uncertain season. I know people have a problem with the Electoral College, so I'll save that for another episode. But if we're just thinking about Arkansas, the rules are very simple. Whoever gets the most votes wins. That's it. That's statewide, countywide, citywide. Whoever gets the most votes wins. That's the game. And we have to figure out how to play that game if we want to protect ourselves. So I've said all that to come back to the top of the question. Should we mind our business, our Black political business? And my answer goes a little like this. Our political power is real, but we have to use it strategically and we have to use it consistently. We can't just pop up every 4 years when somebody has begged us to come and vote for the president and expect things to change. We have to be involved consistently on a local level, on a state level, so that we know what's going on and people feel the pressure. That's what this game is. They have to feel the pressure of the constituency so that they will move. They're not gonna move unless we make them. And if we're going to the question of should we mind our business, I say yes and no. Yes, we absolutely need to be concerned about building community and building infrastructure within our communities so that we can advocate for one another and we can sustain our communities into the future. But I don't believe that that means we need to shut other people out. I've heard plenty of conversation where people are saying, oh, well, these folks voted for this and this is what they wanted and that doesn't have anything to do with me. Well, unfortunately, oppression spills over. It does not just go neatly into a box. It doesn't just fill up a cup and stop right there. It will run over and it will touch us because what's done to our neighbors will absolutely be done to us. So should you mind your Black political business? Yes, you definitely need to be minding the business of the Black community, but that does not mean shut other people out because you're just wasting time because it's gonna happen to us as well. Nobody's coming to save us. We're gonna have to do it ourselves, and we can do it ourselves. I'm not saying that to make you sad or make you feel powerless. I'm saying that to let you know that this is not a new idea. People have been getting together and working together for years. So as a student, if you're on campus, you need to get in a student organization. There are plenty to choose from. There are subsidiaries of national organizations like the NAACP, or maybe you want to get in a sorority or a fraternity, or maybe you want to advocate for yourself in your department. Whatever your major or minor is, if you don't see people like you teaching, if you don't see materials that reflect your interests, you can advocate for those things, and that is still doing the work. If you're not on campus, maybe you're out living in the world, you can still do something. We have so many organizations. Like I mentioned, the NAACP is one of the oldest organizations that exists, and it doesn't just continue to exist because it's useless. They are doing the work that needs to be done, and that's not the only one. There are several organizations that you can be a part of. You don't even have to join some big name organization. Maybe you have a community council that you need to participate in. Maybe you have some local church affiliation that you need to start participating in. Whatever it may be, we need it. People always like to say, I'm not a speaker, or I don't like to speak in front of folks, I don't know how to do all these things. You know how to do something. Whatever your skill set is, you know how to do something, and we need you in this fight. And I'll say it over here too. Whatever your skill set is, we need you in this fight. There is nothing that you can tell me that you know how to do that I couldn't figure out a way to get you in this work with us. So please don't think that because you're not a speaker, you're not a marcher, you're not all these things, that there's not a place for you. We have to mind our business by figuring out what it is we can do and do those things. I mentioned joining an organization. You can do voter registration drives. You can support mutual aid, which is essentially helping each other out. All the time we see people who need help paying for things. We see folks that are hungry. Just making sure that we take care of each other is a part of joining this fight. And I'll also say that it looks different for everybody, right? There's been several marches that have popped up and will continue to go on throughout the rest of this presidential term, I'm sure. And what I'll say about that is, if that's what you want to do, get out there. You be safe. You make sure that you know who organized that protest, because they are supposed to be organized. I know sometimes it feels like you go to a protest or you go to a march and it feels like just this big thing and people came out there, but those things are supposed to be organized. There are supposed to be permits in place. There are supposed to be securities set up so that you can be safe in that. So as long as you feel safe and you know what's going on, get out there. I'll say for me, I don't believe that putting my body on the line in that way is where I'm best serving the community, because I'm putting my body on the line in other ways. Anytime you speak about politics, you are putting yourself at risk. So whatever you choose to do, please know that it is appreciated. I recognize the sacrifice that it takes to get involved. So thank you for that. Now, it boils down to this. You find something you care about, and then you go and do it. There's no in between. There's nothing else to be said there. You have to do something. We have to move. We can't afford to sit this out. And so I'll end there by saying, she who sits on the red hot stove shall surely rise. Y'all stay black and have a lovely day.